in Oliverea. The summer's coming, so soon I'll see you in Big Indian and Oliverea. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Big Indian and Oliverea. Big Indian and Oliverea. The summer's coming, so soon I'll see you in Big Indian and Oliverea.
This movie was inspired by Justin Kessler's postcard collection of Vacation Valley. Vacation Valley was once a phrase used by the Catskill Mountain News to describe the Big Indian Oliverea Valley. Through Justin's postcards, we can take a peek at a bygone era when resorts dotted the valley. My name is Chris Van Cleek, and I am the historian at Winnesuck Club, and with Justin's blessing, made this movie based on his postcard collection. To understand how this beautiful valley became a magnet for tourists, we need to travel back before the resorts became popular. What we now call the village of Big Indian was once called the Clove. In 1865, the village was renamed Big Indian after a Munsee Indian named Winnesuck.
I'm Winnesuck.
Winnesuck lived and died in the area in the 1700s and was 7 feet tall, hence the name Big Indian. Who knows for sure, but maybe the residents of 1865 felt the name and mythology of Winnesuck was a more charming name for their village. But what transformed this remote area to what was eventually called Vacation Valley? First and foremost, the Big Indian train station was built in 1871. By the way, taking a vacation was an unheard of concept until the 1880s, so the railroad had to convince New York City dwellers to come to the Catskills to rest. The second factor that brought tourism to the valley was the popularity of Slide Mountain. Hiking was a popular health craze at the time, and when Slide was deemed the highest mountain in the Catskills, city dwellers had to get to the summit of Slide. Interest in Slide was also strongly influenced by author John Burroughs' brilliant descriptions of the beauty of Slide Mountain.
There is wisdom in these hills. Slide Mountain is the center and the chief of the southern Catskills. Here, the works of man dwindle.
As a result, New York residents rode the trains to hike Slide, and summer tourism exploded in Big Indian and Oliverea. Local homes were turned into boarding houses, and resorts of all sizes were built. When tourists stepped off the train in Big Indian, the first thing they saw was this general area. Now let's superimpose buildings that were there around 1900. We can see Bryant's Store, Lament's Hotel, and Ailey's General Store. This 1920s postcard shows another view looking up Oliverea Road with Bryant's Store on the left. Now let's go up Oliverea Road and see how Justin's postcards give us a view of the old resorts of Vacation Valley. A few moments up the road on the right is a building constructed by the Molyneux family around 1887. It was a boarding house for tourists who had disembarked from the train. The Molyneux were descendants of Winnisook and Gertrude Molyneux. As you can see in this 1923 postcard image, the Molyneux house eventually became a hotel called the Madorn. This is the Madorn in 1947. Let's go down the road and go around a familiar corner. We come to this spot where we can view the Dunham Bridge of today and yesteryear. Now let's walk across today's Dunham Bridge. As we go down the road, we come to this intersection. The Jewish Home and Casimir's Lodge were once resorts down these roads. Let's first take a look down Crookshank Road and see the Jewish Home, also known as Camp Lehman. It was originally a hunting lodge in the early 1900s, owned by Herbert Lehman. Lehman eventually co-founded the banking firm, the Lehman Brothers, and also became governor of New York and state senator from New York. The building and grounds have been many things over the years. After Lehman left the house sometime around 1910, Jewish women working in the garment industry in New York City would come here for a week's vacation. At that time, the building was called the Jewish Home. By the 1930s and 40s, it was called Camp Lehman. By the 1960s, it was a camp for ballet and sports. To attract tourists, pools like this one were a necessity in the valley. Originally, these primitive pools were man-made lakes, made with gravel, sand, and concrete. Water was gathered from the Esopus. When the water had been in the pool for too long, it was replaced by new water from the creek. Of course, eventually resorts had modern pools with liners and chlorine. In days gone by, if you crossed the Dunham Bridge and went straight on Lost Clove Road, there was a gorgeous hotel called Casimir's Lodge. Originally called the Big Indian Hotel, the main building was constructed around 1892. In 1922, Steve Casimir bought the property and added a swimming pool which looked like this by the 1950s. Like many of the postcards in this movie, the images themselves are wonderful works of Catskill art. Many are carefully crafted paintings such as this one. Notice the beautiful rustic bridge, the old-fashioned tennis court, and the social building. Imagine the drinks and laughs in that little building. In the 1960s, the property was known as the Ashram. The Ashram was a Buddhist retreat led by Rudy. Saying goodbye to Rudy and Casimir's, let's go back over the Dunham Bridge and up Oliverea Road and see what else we find. Just past this familiar sign on the right, we see this building, which was once called the Elizabeth House. The Elizabeth House opened in the 1940s. The resort provided a tennis court and beautiful grounds. By 1960, this resort was open year-round and offered not only rooms in the main house, but also 3- and 4-room cottages in the back. This was the recreation hall. Most resorts in the valley had a rec hall where one could leave their room or cottage to socialize with others. This postcard was sent in the early 1960s. This aerial view really allows us to appreciate the beauty of the Elizabeth House and its expansive grounds. Eventually, the resort became the Big Indian Lodge. A few moments up the road, we come to the Cold Spring Lodge. The original farm on the site was called the Cold Spring House, and later the Cold Spring Farm. Look at how picturesque this property was. Unfortunately, this beautiful building burned down in 1934. After the fire, the Bedell family took over the property and built these rental cottages in the late 1930s. Today, the Cold Spring Lodge features 7 rustic cabins and 5 hotel rooms on a 40-acre property. Let's go around a few corners past the Cold Spring Lodge and ride through 1894 Oliverea.
Hi! Welcome to our town.
Oliverea was the surname of a family that settled here around 1860. The original pronunciation was Oliverea, as in rhymes with sea. Now let's take the same ride through Oliverea while I provide a few million details. The first building you see is the white 1870s schoolhouse. According to local author Laura Ailey, the state provided honey and peanut butter, which students ate by the spoonful while sitting by the potbelly stove. Firewood for the stove was supplied by the students' parents. The building next to the schoolhouse is Dutcher's General Store. On April 24, 1884, the Oliverea Post Office found its first home at Dutcher's Store. Dutcher's Store is the first building on the left. This building is the Mountain House and was the only hotel in downtown Oliverea. Let's leave 19th century Oliverea behind and go to the 1920s. Please note that in the 19th century photographs, it's as if we were traveling away from Big Indian towards Slide Mountain. The 1920s Oliverea photographs are as if we're traveling to Big Indian. You could see the sign for Dutcher's Store, and above that you could see the steeple which was a part of the schoolhouse. On the left is a house built in 1884 and for many decades was the Oliverea Post Office.
This weather is perfect for a swim, don't you think? Yes, we should go to the river this weekend.
Before we leave downtown Oliverea, let's review these 3 buildings that we've studied and see what happened to them. The Oliverea Schoolhouse closed in 1951. Beginning in 1956, the building became the last Oliverea post office and closed in the 1980s. By the late 1930s, the store was owned by Sid Levine and is fondly remembered by many as a great country store. By the late 1980s, it was converted into a private residence, and in 2011, the building was destroyed by Hurricane Irene. The Mountain House became the Tavern somewhere along about 1940. The Tavern was a bar and restaurant owned by the Levine family and was a place to drink, dance, and get into the occasional fistfight. To quote Laurel Ailey, the best place you could be on a Saturday night for a square dance was the Tavern. The place boomed with Frank Constable's band and the floor shook with the many dancers that attended. The Tavern was the only place you could go with $2 in your pocket and come home with change. The Tavern was a local favorite until its demise in the early 1970s. Let's take a look north at what the old village looks like today. Almost all the buildings were destroyed by 2 floods in the 1950s and many more by Hurricane Irene in 2011. As I revise this movie in 2026, all the buildings in Oliverea have been destroyed. Here we make a right turn, crossing over the Esopus Creek into McKinley Hollow. Straight ahead are 3 resorts we will visit soon, but first let's take a left and visit the Fairview Hotel, later Brown's Bungalow Colony. The original hotel was called the Fairview. The Fairview began in the early 20th century. Maybe it was so named as it had a fairly good view of Balsam Mountain. Here is a 1920s postcard depicting the 3-story Fairview Hotel that could accommodate more than 200 overnight guests. In its day, the Fairview was the largest hotel in the Oliverea Valley and was really quite an elegant place in the middle of nowhere. This is the upstairs dining room of the Fairview. This was the swimming pool of the Fairview, which was much more lake than pool. Note that the Oliverea Church is in the background to the left. By the late 1930s, the Fairview changed its name to the Oliverea Country Club and had a modern pool. Unfortunately, the top 2 floors of this massive building burned on June 13, 1945. This is our friend and postcard collector, Justin Kessler, standing by the sign for Brown Road. The Kesslers vacationed at Brown's bungalow colony from the 1940s to 1989 when Brown's closed. Here is Justin's description of how the Fairview became Brown's bungalow colony. Sometime in the years after 1945, Mr. Brown created Brown Bungalow Colony from the ruins of the Fairview Hotel, later known as the Oliverea Country Club. The hotel's former first floor became the centerpiece of the bungalow colony and was known as the Casino, a gathering place where children put on plays and drank cokes from the soda machine on the front porch. Brown Bungalow Colony consisted of a few fields dotted by wooden bungalows. The bungalows themselves were rustic and bare, with no phones, televisions, or other comforts we now associate with vacation living. A single telephone served the entire colony, with a loudspeaker in the center of a field from which the colony owners would announce incoming phone calls and other news deemed worthy of public address, like the availability of ice cream sandwiches in the colony's owner's house. Thanks to Justin for this great description. During the average summer weekend at Brown's, 120 people were staying in 42 bungalows. While the husbands had to return to New York City to work during the week, the wives and kids stayed all summer. A family rented the same bungalow summer after summer and would leave their belongings there during the off-season. Plays and skits were performed in the recovered first floor of the original hotel, and this piano is recalled with love by the BBC community. Here is a home movie by BBC member John Cador showing the community in the early 1960s. Let's return to the bridge and go up McKinley Hollow to learn about 3 more resorts. To the left of my blue car once stood a beautiful turn-of-the-century boarding house called the Jocelyn House. The Jocelyn House was in business from the 1890s to 1919. It sat on more than 100 acres of woods and accommodated about 50 guests. As was true of many old resorts, the Jocelyn House had its own bowling alleys. You can see the fence in this postcard and how it was built of stone pillars and metal pipe. Here is some of the remaining pipe used as part of the fence and a few of the pillars. Hidden in the grass and trees, a few pieces of the stone and cement sidewalk can still be found. As far as I can tell, 82-year-old George Jocelyn sold his boarding house in 1919, and the new owner called the house the Indian Glen. Further up the road and across the street was the Hedler Villa boarding house. As you can see, the porch of today resembles the old porch. Across the street from the Hedler Villa and in the back of this photo is the Oliverea Cemetery and the Oliverea Church. The last time the Catskill Mountain News listed church services in Oliverea was in September 1955. This beautiful painting is by Louis Comby. This postcard image is from around 1900. Winter photos are so helpful as those pesky leaves are not in the way. Let's take away the red lettering and slowly take in the scene. Now let's go to the end of the hollow and discover McKinley Farm. The original owner of the resort at the end of the hollow was Dr. McKinley, but somehow over time the name changed to McKinley Hollow. McKinley Farm has a unique place in the history of Vacation Valley as it was owned by a black man who was a New York City physician. He was also the first black man to graduate from Long Island College Hospital. In the early 20th century, his Oliverea summer home became McKinley Farm and was a resort for African Americans from New York City. A 1915 ad in a New York City newspaper stated, quote, "an extensive acreage in the heart of a picturesque and healthful paradise," unquote. Unfortunately, we have no images of McKinley Farm.
Thank you for including me in this movie about Vacation Valley. I was once the proud owner of McKinley Farm.
On the site of McKinley Farm, the Mountain Gate opened in 1963. In its day, it was a secluded paradise, and by the early 1970s provided regular entertainment. In 1990, the Mountain Gate became the Shangri-La, which had an Indian restaurant. By 2019, it was purchased by the East Wind. Let's turn around and retrace our steps. Here we are going past the Jocelyn House, later known as the Indian Glen. As you can see, we're approaching the Oliverea Bridge, where we'll go over the bridge and take a right onto Oliverea Road, also known as Route 47. In honor of Dr. McKinley, let's say we're leaving McKinley Hollow. After a few more twists in the road, we come to this farm that Byron Dutcher purchased in 1862. Byron opened a boarding house on this property in 1880, which he called a Slide Mountain House. If you recall, Byron Dutcher also owned the Dutcher store in downtown Oliverea, which he opened in 1892. Needless to say, he was a busy man. This is the original Slide Mountain House. And across the street was the Slide Mountain House dance hall and bathing pool. Around the back of this building was a beautiful lake that was also a part of this property. The water from the lake filled up the pool. Unfortunately, the original building of the Slide Mountain House burned down in 1932. In 1934, the Comby family bought the property. For 3 generations, the Comby family have owned and operated this resort. In June of 2019, I had the privilege of walking across this lawn and entering the wonderful old porch to interview Ralph Comby Sr. and his friend Bill Burgess. That is Ralph on the left and Bill on the right. Ralph's first-hand knowledge of Big Indian and Oliverea was an amateur historian's dream come true. Let's hear what Ralph has to say.
Long story. My father, my grandfather was what they call a forester in Germany, which is like a game warden and forest ranger, a whole combination. So my father grew up introduced to hunting. And he actually came to this valley hunting. They went to some place and then they didn't like it there. And somebody told them about Oliverea. So they came here. The mountains reminded him, he came from the Black Forest. The mountains reminded him of home. And that's how we ended up getting here, because he liked the area. He and one of the other man and his wife and my mother and I came on vacation in the summertime. And that's when he found out this burnt down hotel there, and that the property was for sale.
Was it common for so many German people to love it here because the mountains did remind them of Germany? Is that part of the draw?
I think it was for a lot of people. It certainly was for my family.
Where did your family move from, Ralph?
From Brooklyn.
From Brooklyn.
My mother hated it, I'm sure.
Out here?
Well, we didn't have electricity. The only heat we had, I guess, was a kitchen stove. I remember my father saying sometimes in the morning when you woke up, your breath had frozen on the blanket.
Yeah.
I mean, they had feather blankets, at least. So if you stayed underneath them, but you didn't come out unless you had to. And that was probably then you had to go outside to the outhouse. That's why you got up.
One of only 4 students, Ralph graduated 6th grade at the Oliverea schoolhouse around 1941.
I went to grade school there, but I only went 6 years because it was a one-room schoolhouse, and you heard everything that was going on. And the teacher say, "Ralph, you sounds like you know all this stuff. You want to take the Regents exam?" In the very end, there were only 4. But we did. The last teacher we had was a man. We had mostly women up until that point. He was a man, and he was very good. But he also, if he saw, that we maybe should learn something else, he had us. We all built a wheelbarrow. Okay. I mean, stuff like that. I mean, how to use a hammer and.
Ralph Comby Sr. is about 12 years old and in the black and red wool coat.
It's not so bad.
That's our place.
I know. That's a beautiful postcard.
Yeah, it's probably one of our original postcards.
Figure that's in the 30s, Ralph?
Yeah. We came here in 34. I guess 35 we started on a small scale and worked our way up from there. It was altogether different. What we called a good customer came Memorial Weekend, came 4th of July, came for 2 weeks of vacation, came for our Oktoberfest,
Gotcha.
and they came for 20 years, 30 years,
And it was their regular
40
thing.
years. In those days, the people all tended to work for one place, like forever. They always had the same vacation. Once they came here 2 years, they knew everybody that was going to be here those 2 weeks.
Gotcha.
And they got to be a kind of a family group. They looked forward to, oh boy, we're going to see him and her. I mean, they became friends of ours too. We'd go and visit some of them. They, like I say, because they got to know each other, they'd get together in the off season once in a while with each other.
Right. Oh, like down in New York or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. The Slide Mountain Inn was an original building, and the bowling alleys inside date back to at least 1898. This is Ralph Comby Jr. at the bar. Let's see what the deer on the wall of Ralph's Bar and Bowling has to say.
Between you and me, you would not believe the things I've seen and heard over the last century hanging at the slide. Millions of hours of laughter, good cheer, stupid jokes, pick-up lines, and exaggerated fishing stories. And lots of BS.
We will return to the Slide Mountain House and Inn in a few moments. But first, let's go down Burnham Hollow Road and learn about two more resorts. First, let's pass the Urban Cowboy and visit the former Crystal Spring House. When this 1850s farmhouse first became a boarding house, it was called the Mountain Home. Later, it was known as the Crystal Spring House, well owned by Pardee Burnham. The hollow was named Burnham Hollow after the Burnham family. Laura Ailey offers this charming description of this boarding house. The title of her chapter on the Crystal Spring House is The Best Water in Town. The Crystal Spring House on Burnham Hollow Road in Oliverea was named because it had a crystal clear spring in the rear of the house. A 3-inch stream of water ran into a small boxed reservoir. It was cold water, so cold you could keep milk or butter there that would never spoil. A cup was kept at the spring so anyone could get a drink of the clear, cold water. Laney Burnham ran the Crystal Spring House for boarders that came back year after year to enjoy her wonderful cooking and clean atmosphere. Laney had a church social in her big yard in the summer. I can still taste the homemade ice cream and the delicious cakes. Today, this building is a rental property. Let's reverse course and go up and see the Urban Cowboy that was originally called the Alpine Inn. Ralph has this to say about the Alpine.
It was built, one after the other.
Yeah.
They started out, almost the same time as my parents.
Yeah.
But the two brothers that were actually here started to build up the place. They were very good friends with my father, and they worked together a lot. Like if my father needed help with something, they'd come and help him, and if they needed help, he'd help.
The Grisa family owned and operated the Alpine Inn for 3 generations, from 1936 to 2019. It was once described as a German Bavarian retreat and eventually expanded to 28 rooms. The family sold the Alpine Inn in 2019 to the Urban Cowboy. The Urban Cowboy is described as a boutique wilderness resort and restaurant. In 2024, the Urban Cowboy purchased the Slide Mountain House and Inn, which marked the end of 90 years of operation for the Comby family. 90 years is the longest continuous one-family resort in Vacation Valley. A close second is the Alpine Inn with 85 years from 1936 to 2019. In honor of Ralph Comby Jr., the inn is now called Ralph's Bar and Bowling.
I've been hanging on one of the walls of the Slide Mountain Inn for decades. Welcome to the Urban Cowboy. It's a great place to hang out.
Let's go visit Shirley Cottage, later known as the Catskill Mountain Lake House. At the head of the lake, we find this private home that was once Shirley Cottage. This boarding house was owned for many years by Lawrence Dutcher, who was Byron's son. Lawrence had a daughter named Shirley, but it's unknown whether she ever ran the boarding house. Lawrence Dutcher sold the property in 1941, and from then on it was known as the Catskill Mountain Lake House. The Catskill Mountain Lake House consisted of 13 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, a dining room, and the building itself was 8,000 square feet. This card was postmarked in 1960. It shows how idyllic the property was from an overhead view. The property has been a private home since around 1996. Between these stone pillars was the driveway to the Catskill Mountain Lake House. The dirt road is called Eagle Mountain Road and brings us to a beautiful place called the Eagle Mountain House. For all you map lovers, here's another way to appreciate the location of the Eagle Mountain House. In 1972, a rock and roll band called the Fabulous Rhinestones rented the Eagle Mountain House and turned it into a recording studio. The production supervisor was none other than Michael Lang, who co-founded the Woodstock Festival in 1969. I contacted Cal David, who was a member of the Fabulous Rhinestones, and he gave me permission to play his song, Big Indian. Let's give a listen.
Oh, big The sun, the summer and the fun is just about over. Eagle Mountain, oh, I gotta run. I don't mind. One more time, I'll be your rover. We got it all together in almost no time. But sometimes I feel...
Today, the Eagle Mountain House is a private residence. Now let's turn around and go back to Oliverea Road. You can see on the map where I circled the Brenner Haven Brookside Cottages, which is our next point of interest.
George and I established Brenner Haven in 1948. Can you believe the late 1960s are here? The large swimming pool is available only a stone's throw from any of the 18 cottages. The cottages are just far enough apart for privacy but close enough to prevent loneliness. Brenner Haven stands out as the ideal vacation playground for young and old.
If you seek a vacation for your family without fuss or frills, where you can associate with friendly people like yourself, wear comfortable clothes, and relax completely in the cold mountain air, you'll feel at home at Brenner Haven. Within walking distance is nightly entertainment, including Friday night movies at the firehouse.
Kids who were staying at Brenner Haven loved wearing these t-shirts. Let's return to the Slide Mountain Inn and Ralph Comby Sr. for a story about his favorite patrons at the bar. George Brenner, of Brenner Haven, was a retired Irish police officer from New York City. Many of his guests were Irish police officers and firefighters from New York City.
They were really good customers in my bar. Quite often in the afternoon after lunch, by the time I went over to open up, they were already sitting on the railing and drink what I thought was enough for a day, and they'd go home. And sure enough, at 9 o'clock, they'd come marching in again and start all over.
What should we do with a drunken sailor? What should we do with a drunken sailor? What should we do with a drunken sailor? In the morning, way headed up to rise this way, headed up to rise this way, headed up to rise this way. In the morning, shady speller with a rusty razor, shady speller with a rusty razor, shady speller with a rusty razor.
In 1972, Brenner Haven was sold and became the Brookside Cottages. What a beautiful pool with natural stone walls. Carlos and his family vacationed at Brookside in the last years of its existence. In 2000, Carlos and his two brothers purchased the property. At first, they tried renting some of the cabins, but found it more to their liking to keep the property as a family compound. These days, hardly any of the family visits the property. In 2019, Carlos was mowing the lawn when I was driving by and gave me a tour of the former site of Brenner Haven and Brookside.
Restaurant, dining hall?
Like a rug. You can come in and see
Okay.
if you want. It was a wreck-a-mole.
Like a little stage. You know, the old camps, they would do little plays and stuff.
So this one, my kids used to use it when they were younger. When we would come up, my wife and I would stay in that one.
Wow.
My kids would stay in this one. I asked the guy, Robert Joe Dickey, the guy who we bought the property, who's about my age, a little bit older. He said, yeah, that's his cousin. And
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
And Arnold Schwarzenegger stayed here, yeah. There was a picture of him in the big house in the dining. And there was a movie filmed here.
Right here?
Yeah.
Oh, which movie?
It's Caterskill Falls.
Wow.
When we bought the property, some guys used to rent here because we rented for a little bit. It was too much headache, so we stopped renting. But some guys used to rent here from Manhattan, and they asked if they could film here. So I'm like, okay, whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So they came up with a crew of like 10 people. And in a couple of weekends, they filmed this movie.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's not going anywhere.
Right.
Most of it was filmed here, and part of it was filmed in the actual falls.
What? How long since the pool's been working?
Yeah, a long time. We only come up on the weekends, and it's too much of a headache. And then neighbors, the guy over there, he was bringing in his family and friends.
Further up the valley, we find Mabon Hollow, where the Holland House began taking in boarders in 1918. Today, the property looks like this, but a century ago, Holland House was a beautiful dairy farm. It had a wide view of the countryside and great fishing in the Esopus Creek. But let's hear a description from a 1930s boarder.
My name is Elmer Dreyer. My family spent our vacations at Holland House from 1930 to 1939. The house and its other buildings accommodated about 60 people. We made wonderful friends during these vacations. During the day, one could play tennis, swim in the pool, or hike Slide Mountain. Other days were full of simply relaxing in an easy chair. As you can see, my father spent most of his time fishing. At night, there was dancing, and music was provided by Elise, Mr. Holland's daughter.
Byron Dutcher's first cousin Jim Dutcher built the Panther Mountain House in the 1870s. This 1894 photo really came alive through modern technology. Jim Dutcher was also the postmaster of the Slide Mountain Post Office, which was originally in the dining room of the Panther Mountain House. By the 1890s, the Slide Mountain Post Office was across the street in this building that was more or less where the staff parking lot of the Full Moon is today.
My name is Jim Dutcher. Somebody asked me to tell you about myself. I don't know why, but here goes. I come to this valley in '51 when I was 13 years old. I worked as a bark peeler. Once the tanning business was gone, me and the wife built the Panther Mountain House. I built the Dutcher Trail up Slide to bring my guests up there to see the sights. Some call me the guardian spirit of Slide Mountain. I don't know nothing about that, but I love every inch of Slide. Newspaper guy said I climbed through the woods like a mountain goat. Best damn compliment I ever received. Yesterday I walked in the deep woods and I'd seen the moss and leaves all over the forest floor like a carpet. I'll tell you what, no man could weave the like of it. Others say I'm a person of easy company. I guess I'm easy to get along with, but to be sure, I asked my wife if this is true. She says, I guess we get along well enough. We have 11 children, don't we?
Unfortunately, on December 8, 1912, the Panther Mountain House burned to the ground. Soon after, Charlie Andrews bought the property and built a small resort across the street from the site of the Panther Mountain House and called it the Valley View House. By 1918, the Parker family purchased the old post office building and transformed it into a bar called the Wigwam. Like many resorts in Vacation Valley, in the 1940s and the 1950s, the Valley View House became very popular. Eventually, Andrews built a bowling alley across the street from the main building, which was transformed into a bar in 1947. For the past 20 or so years, the Valley View House is now the Full Moon Resort, which specializes in country weddings and music camps. Let's go up Oliverea Road and learn about the Falls House that was run by the Parker family. In March of 2019, I had the privilege of interviewing 93-year-old Miles Parker Jr. about the Parker property at the top of this hill. Miles called this hill the Valley View Hill. Up past this hill, the Parker family bought 3,000 acres of land in 1870. Let's hear what Miles told me.
Well, the original guy, Miles, he had the sawmill, then he had a boarding house that had 33 guests, then he had a laundry room and a chicken place and a huge barn, and he had 25 guys working for him at one time.
This is the Falls House, and was a beautiful boarding house. The sawmill is in the back and left. It was powered by the Esopus Creek. Prior to the Parkers buying the property in 1870, the Wave family established and used the sawmill. We are so lucky to have the following image of the inside of the Parker sawmill. The sawmill and the boarding house and 25 workers and their families created quite a little community.
I think the Falls house and the mill burned down someplace around 1905.
What a sad ending to a beautiful place. The good news, the Parkers have lived in the area for generations ever since in another building. The Catskill Mountain News published a great article about the Big Indian Oliverea Valley on June 29, 1956. The article comments on the beauty of the valley and how tourism was booming in the mid-1950s. To give us a feeling of that time, here are a few passages from the article. The Big Indian Oliverea Valley is a gem of the Catskills. It is a restful retreat bound to stir appreciation for the beauty of nature. Its breezes are cooling, yet there is enough summer sun to warm the vacationer. The vacationer's life is a leisurely one. By comparison to more populous resort regions, there is less regimentation and less professional entertainment. Each guest is free to find his own pleasure. The accent is on relaxation, easy to do when nature has provided as many beauties as she has in the Oliverea Valley. There is an old country feeling to the valley, of friendliness and comfort. The major boarding houses and bungalow colonies have been booked almost completely for the upcoming 1956 summer. Last summer, the season for vacationers was the best the valley has ever experienced. This summer promises to even be better with the opening of the Thruway. Thanks to the Catskill Mountain News for that great narrative. Little did anyone know that the Thruway represented the beginning of the end of peak tourism in Vacation Valley. By 1960, the ability to take a family vacation far from New York City expanded rapidly by the interstate highway system and by speedy and more economical airlines. Not to mention staying cool with home air conditioners.
Kind of clientele you had. For us, the airline industry kind of made our business kind of slow down. Yeah, because our clientele ended up to be mostly German. And in those days, the people had 2 weeks vacation. That's all they had, wherever they worked.
Sure.
They couldn't go to Europe and visit their relatives. For 2 weeks, it'd take them 2 weeks to go back and forth. So they didn't visit their families very much. So, boy, once aviation started, oh man,
everyone
now I
goes
can
everywhere,
go
yeah.
tomorrow.
When they started building superhighways and put the train out of business, well, the train put itself out of business,
Right.
but that changed things here.
Okay.
Our whole economy and everything around here changed.
Big Indian and Oliverea. Summer's coming, so soon I'll see you in Big Indian and Oliverea. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Big Indian and Oliverea. Big Indian and Oliverea.
Man, it is hot today. Good thing we stopped in at Dutcher's for that ice cream.
Mrs. Burnham, this is the best ice cream I've ever had the pleasure to eat. You would not believe the things I've seen and heard being attached to this wall. Millions of stories full of laughter, good cheer, stupid jokes, pickup lines, and overrated fishing stories, and lots of BS. Though a bit repetitive, I have enjoyed every minute of it over the...
You would not believe the things I've seen and heard being attached to this wall. Millions of stories full of laughter, good cheer, stupid jokes, pickup lines, and overrated fishing stories. And lots of BS. Though a bit repetitive, I have enjoyed every minute of it over the...